for sternum, RAO. So with a patient prone or PA, place them in RAO position in order to utilize the heart shadow. So on this, basically, you know, your sternum is right over your vertebral column. I basically cannot do an AP or a PA because it would be, if I took it, it'd be right over that vertebral column, I'm not gonna see it. So I do need to have a little rotation. So what I do is a tiny, it's very tiny, it's 15 to 20 degree rotation, RAO. Basically what it's gonna do is put that heart, so you have that, or you have that sternum made of bone, and then you have that heart made of tissue. It's gonna basically kind of use that to kind of enhance that bone. So basically when I turn, that sternum is gonna be right over my heart tissue, and you're gonna see that bone really well through that heart tissue. So RAO, and on this too, it's always kind of like, it doesn't block anything, it doesn't superimpose it because it's tissue and bone. It's almost kind of highlights that sternum. Align the patient's body so that the long axis of sternum is centered midline of the IR. Adjust the elevation of the left shoulder and hip so that the thorax is rotated enough to prevent superimposition of the vertebrae in the sternum. The required degree of rotation can be estimated by placing one hand on the sternum, the other on the spine, and then rotate about 15 to 20 degrees, 10 by 12 lengthwise. Center is to T7, and then I center 1 inch lateral to the mid-sagittal plane of the elevated side, because if my sternum's here and I turn this way, I'm going to center 1 inch to the elevated side to be right over my sternum. Column make to 10 by 12, so we're just going to keep it open. Use a long exposure time or suspend on expiration on this one. So I'm going to get my twelve, 10.
Oh, it's so small.
Right there. I'm going to put something around real quick. I'm going to grab something real quick.
Doesn't it?
Well, I don't even know. We never really do 10 by 12 on here, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
you're right.
that's probably why.
214 by 17.
It's pretty close.
Oh, just think, oh my. Shouldn't have picked that.
Real quick, what I'm gonna do, because it says to center at T7, honestly, that's a little low. If I would center at T7, I'd be very close to the top of the sternum. So what, kind of the thing for this one to do, basically, if I feel where that jugular notch is right there, and put my image receptor about 1.5 to 2 inches above that jugular notch, and then have them turn around, I'm gonna get that sternum every time. So basically the sternum's 6 inches, I'm using 12 inches. If I center, or if I put the top of it 2 inches above, that's gonna leave me about 10 inches to go. I mean, basically have 12 inches to fill 6 inches. So basically I'm good, I got it where I need to go. Take a little step to the side for me. Alright. Alright. Go ahead and turn face the board for me. Go ahead and put your chest up against the board. And this is just going to be a slight turn. I mean, it's not 45, just 15 to 20. I'm going to turn you just a little bit that way. That's it. Right there. And so I'm already set up right there. So once again, I mean, it does look kind of low a little bit, but it is going to diverge. I set it up when he was in AP. It's going to get it. So I'm going to leave it where it is. And then basically find the spine and go over about 1 inch, and it's kind of already there anyway. So.
Okay, you said you set up an AP?
And then I just put the top of the light about 2 inches, 1.5 inches above, let it fall, and then turn them
Center
around.
in the middle.
Yeah, to
In the
start
beginning,
with,
okay.
yeah, just to get it, everything lined up. So there's that right there. So go ahead and take a breath in, blow it all the way out, hold it out, expose. So the tiny little RAO centered about 1 inch to the elevated side. So it should be, when he's turned like that, going right over that sternum. You go ahead and relax. The imager, the marker, I can just put right there with the light, or I can put on the image receptor 10x12 up there in the corner, just so it's out of the way. So doing that RAO, this is his left side, that's his right side. If I put the left over here, it's correct. Right over here, it's correct. Questions on that one? Sit here standing with the shoulder against the IR, rotate the shoulders backwards, locks their hands behind their back, adjust the patient so that the broad surface of the sternum is at a right angle to the image receptor. So basically you're in a true lateral. Center the sternum to the midline of the IR, 10x12 lengthwise, 1.5 inches above the jugular notch, kind of same thing. Center, or your SID is going to be 72. And exposure is going to be made on deep inspiration. So on this one, I talked about this last time. Basically, now that I'm doing a lateral, my sternum, if this is the board, here's my sternum. My sternum is, I have increased OID. We'll talk about this in other chapters, but if I increase my OID, I need to increase my SID. So just be careful on this when you're comping. This is kind of a random one that like one thing's done at 40, one thing's done at 72. So, you know, in the book it said 30, but I still just did it at 40. That's fine. Or D10 it in, we're good. So go ahead and put your left shoulder up against the board. So we just normally do left just because, I mean, left lateral chest, heart closer, left just more common. So on this one, go ahead and put your arms behind your back, and really like if your arms are just like right here, they're behind my back, but my shoulders are still in the way. When you do this, you really have to bring those shoulders back and stick that chest out, no matter how like awkward it is or whatever. But shoulders back, stick that chest out. Go ahead and put your shoulder up against the board. Just a little bit. So yeah. So what I'm gonna do is, this is kind of a trick for this one. So I touch on his jugular notch right there, and this one's gonna be deep inspiration. So on this one, go ahead and take a breath in for me. When he takes a breath in right there, it's about 1.5 inches above. I mean, it really shouldn't have changed. I just did his piano bleed, but he's good. When he takes that breath in, I still have about 1.5 inches. Let it fall. That should be a good place to set up my image. So go ahead and scoot back for me just a little bit more. So what I kind of do on this one is like kind of use your x-ray eyes and just be like, okay, if I was going in, I boom, hit the side of that sternum right there. So I'm sitting right there to you. So boom, I go on the side, my feet back this over here. Boom, hitting, if a beam goes through, it's hitting the side of the sternum right there. I just leave collimation open for both of these. Don't collimate down. Go ahead and take a breath in. Hold it. Expose. So that one, big thing, you can relax if you need to. Big thing on that, just make sure, I mean, put your hands behind your back. That doesn't do anything. I need to bring that shoulders back to get those shoulders. If you have those shoulders in front like that, the shoulders are be blocking your sternum. So just make sure hands behind the back, chest out, arms back, and then just kind of using your x-ray eyes. If I follow that through, it'd go right on the side of his sternum.
So what did you do in the beginning when you said you were just measuring the,
So I just want to make sure, it says to center the image receptor 1.5 inches above jugular notch. So I put my finger on my jugular notch, on his jugular notch, and I can see that my finger in the shadow.
Gotcha.
And I go ahead and tell him to take a breath in. And then I'm like, okay, where he took a breath, because if he took a breath in and it's up here, you're going to be tight and I'm not going to like it, you know. So when he took a breath in, I was like, right here, had enough room. I'm going to get everything when I shoot it out. So that's the two for the sternum. Breathing is pretty important on, I don't feel like it's as important on the RAO, but especially on The lateral, taking that breath in, really does help to stick that chest out even more, really get that sternum away from the shoulders. So those are the two for the sternum. Real quick. So ribs are going to be a 14 by 17. So the lines are drawn on the board for ribs. So there's the 17, 14. So you got your AP, place the patient supine or erect for unilateral ribs, center to the side of interest, unless the request specifies above or below the diaphragm. For ribs above the diaphragm, center 14 by 17 lengthwise, top of the image receptor, 1.5 inches above the relaxed shoulders, perpendicular beam. So rest the patient's hand palm outward against the hips. Palmates, 14 by 17, full inspiration. So this breathing is super important. So on this, you do want to take a breath in and hold it. So if you're doing ribs above the diaphragm, so you take a breath in and hold it. So that's going to push the diaphragm down and get the diaphragm out of the way of those ribs. If you're doing below the diaphragm, you take a breath out. That's going to raise the diaphragm up. You see those lower ribs better without the diaphragm in the way. So there's a million ways to do ribs. We're going to do it unilateral. So if you came in, go ahead and put your back up against the board for me. So if you came in and you were saying like you have pain up here, I would do like upper ribs. So, and then if you're having lower pain, I would do lower ribs. And then we would do this correct breathing. Take a little step to your right. One more step. One more step. Okay. So what I'm doing right here is I'm centering that to his left side. There's his left side. Boom, boom. Center to his left side. Top of the board, 1.5 inches above. Top of the image receptor, 1.5 inches above the relaxed shoulder. Go ahead and move your arm out just a little bit. Just so there's no overlap, kind of like we did the chest. Go ahead and take a breath in. Hold it. Expose. You can breathe. So basically just centering. I'm doing left unilateral upper ribs. I'm centering. There's left side, boom, boom. I'm centering to his left side. Top of the board, 1.5 inches above the image receptor. Or top of the image receptor, 1.5 inches above the shoulders. If I was doing ribs below the diaphragm, what I can do is feel the bottom of the image receptor is going to be at the crest. So what I'll do is feel for the top of his crest right there. Put my light at the bottom of my light at the top of his crest. Lower that down. So there's my lower ribs for him. So lower ribs, bottom of the image receptor at the top of the crest. So I'll get all the lower ribs. So I'm still centered to that left side. Go ahead and take a breath in. Blow it all the way out. Hold it out. Expose.
And that's because it's below the diaphragm part?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting ribs below the diaphragm. So if I'm doing ribs above the diaphragm, top of the image receptor, 1.5 inches above the relaxed shoulder, ribs below the diaphragm, bottom of the image receptor at the
I'm
crest.
talking about the breathing part.
Oh, yeah, expiration. Yeah, because I'm trying to move the diaphragm up out of the way. Yeah, sorry, yeah. So on him, I mean, you didn't see it didn't make too much difference, but you see I would cut off his upper ribs right there. Some people, especially maybe doing you, it's almost like you can get your whole ribs in one thing, and it might not look that different one or another. Some people have a little difference. Breathing, super important on that, kind of like chest, abdomen, lung breathing. Definitely repeat. And then the oblique position AP, patient's body is oblique to solid 45. For ribs above the diaphragm, center midway between the mid-sagittal plane, lateral surface, 14 by 17, still 1.5 inches above the shoulders, hand out of the way, full inspiration on this one. So I'm going to go back to where I was. Back up against the board. Good. So for this one, it's especially when we do C-spine next week, kind of if you come up to the patient at, like if I come up to him at a 45-degree angle, basically I'm gonna turn him so he matches me. So if I come up to him at a 45-degree angle, go ahead and turn towards me real quick. Good. So our body should match. If I come up to him at a 45-degree, 45-degree, good. So take a little step. So I have that beam coming in, boom, still center to that left side, mid-sag, lateral border, boom, coming in right there. Go ahead and move that arm out of the way, okay? Go ahead and take a breath in, blow it all the way out. Oh, sorry. Take a breath in, hold it, expose. On that one, you can breathe. So same thing, if you want to stay in that position, I'll find the top of your crest. Not too much difference. Lower that down a little bit. Still got that 45. Turn your feet towards me just a bit. Yeah. Still got that 45. Still going boom. Go ahead and take a breath in. Blow it all the way out. Hold it out. Expose. You can breathe. So on that, when we do lab, you might draw a unilateral, or it might say unilateral upper, or AP upper, AP lower, AP oblique upper, AP oblique lower. So if that's what you draw, just make sure, okay, they are up, right breathing, etc. So everything's open, no collimation. I can shield on both of those. Just make sure when you're doing the lower ribs, you don't stick that shield up too high till it's like superimposing the upper rib, sternum. Obviously it's out of the way, just be careful on that lower rib. So shield for everything. So I have the tick marks. There's your 10 by 12 on that. 14 by 17 is going to be that. You can put the marker on the board or on the image receptor. Just make sure if you're doing a 10 by 12 and you put it on the image receptor, make sure you put it where it's the 10 by 12. Don't put it on the outside 14 by 17. Not too bad. That's it. Yeah. So.
Seems like a lot. I'm not.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Don't know.